Hey, it's Jordan. I am here in Kersley Park in Flint, Michigan. A little chilly out, but really, it's really quite jarring being here because I guess now 5 or 6 years ago, this whole area was filled with tents. It was called Camp Promise, and it was Flint residents basically encamping in this park protesting. At that point, it was, I guess, 3 years into the water crisis, protesting the fact that nothing real had been done for them. The water was still contaminated. The pipes had not been changed. They were getting stonewalled on health care. There was no criminal accountability. And that was, I believe, in 2017. It's now 2023. Yesterday was the 9-year anniversary. And it's just so jarring seeing how empty this park is, because it's really a metaphor. A lot has not changed since this park was filled with those tents and Flint residents. Here with Rhonda, her husband Chris, and you guys have lived through this water crisis, serious health problems, and other issues outside of health. You had a case of Legionnaires 2 years ago, which Legionnaires, which is a deadly waterborne bacteria. A lot of times it's misdiagnosed as pneumonia, but it's actually Legionnaires. The state put out, in my view, complete bullshit numbers that only 12 people died of Legionnaires here. The Legionnaires came because the water wasn't treated properly, and bacteria went into the water, and Legionnaires was born. I've spoken with some kind of chemist and engineering experts that said if you exhumed bodies in Flint, you probably would find hundreds of people that died of Legionnaires. So let's start with the switch. 2014, how was your guys' health relatively before then?
For the most part, I was doing fine. I mean, physically I was doing fine. Once it switched, mentally I knew something was wrong, and it's just been a downhill slope since they've changed it. So and with him, he really went downhill. He had some health issues, just nothing like they are now.
Mm-hmm. And tell me about, after the water switch, you had some health issues before. What were the first things that started popping up for you, and when was that, sir?
Well, they found out I had, they thought I had blood, what's that called, cancer?
Yeah.
And then they run a bunch of tests on that, and they got that straightened around, and then I ended up with stage 3 kidney failure, and I already had the heart problems. My arms, my shoulders, and all that's all tore up, the bones and that. But keep getting surgeries for that.
Mm-hmm. And did that develop in the years after the water switch?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've talked to residents that there's just severe muscle pain, bone problems, the lead, the heavy metals, stunt growth for kids, and also affect adults. So it makes sense that rotator cuff and things like that. And what was it, in 2020 or 2021, you developed severe Legionnaires?
Yep.
I was 21.
They had the CDC call me on the phone in the hospital, and then some people come in the hospital and question me. They wanted to know how I thought that I caught it. And they kept trying to say, well, you got an air conditioner? Yeah, we got an air conditioner, but we don't use it. It's too cold. It's just in the window. And I told them that I think I got it from the shower or something, because that's the only time I come into contact with the water, is the shower.
And when was this that you caught it? Was it like winter or spring?
No, it was in the summer.
It was in the summer. It was in July.
Yeah.
Even Melissa May said you can breathe that into your lungs from the steam.
Yeah.
So we already knew that. But then they didn't want to talk to me no more when I told them what I thought it was.
And what did was the hospital at first saying it was Legionnaires?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then they started this, that it was pneumonia garbage. That was up at McLaren. And It's just a joke, really. But I went home 10 days later. They told me when she had me brought in there, they told me that, or told her that if she wouldn't have called them and had the ambulance come get me, I would have been dead the next morning.
And I think what you just said, people should really understand how important this is. And if you're in East Palestine, pay attention, because this is kind of what's going on there right now. I had sources telling me that when this first started and all the Legionnaires cases were increasing at McLaren Hospital, nurses were told by higher ups, do not diagnose it as Legionnaires, diagnose it as pneumonia, because they didn't want it to get out that there was this outbreak of Legionnaires. It later came out that this was the biggest outbreak of Legionnaires in American history.
Yeah.
And the nurses, you know, they wanted to keep their jobs, etc., followed orders. I believe that those orders coming from the nurses came from higher ups at the hospital who were communicating with Snyder's administration.
Yeah.
Based on my reporting, I think Snyder and his top officials were communicating with the hospital where the Legionnaires outbreak was happening as early as October 2014.
Well, that brings us to the governor and that attorney general. I think them two got paid off. That's why they just let the whole thing fall through.
Yeah.
Of course, neither one of them got no sense. But.
Well, we're going to get to her later. But so why that's important is you're saying that this is not 2015 or 2016 you had Legionnaires. This is 2021, which indicates there was a bacteria somewhere. They're saying it was, you know, the normal areas you would look is air conditioners, but also showers. Legionnaires grows and thrives in hot weather, so July.
Yeah.
But you're saying that the CDC contacted you, and when you told them you thought it was from the Flint water, they basically, that was it? They didn't want to talk anymore?
They didn't talk to me no more after that. They was going to get a hold of me when I got home, and they never did. They never contacted us at all.
And did you...
and I was out of it. I couldn't remember who I talked to or anything like that, so that didn't do me no good, you know, to call them. But
did you ever hear about other people in Flint in recent years having Legionnaires that it wasn't really publicized?
Yeah, they think that her niece had it. Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah, but that was in 2015. She passed away. She was in jail for like 6 months, and of course they didn't know what it was. She was drinking the Flint water, and she got really sick when she got out, and she never recovered.
And I think that's really goes to show you how many people have died of Legionnaires that it didn't go to the actual, it wasn't attributed to the Flint water.
Right.
Not to mention how many people are dying at relatively young ages of cancers, kidney problems, liver problems, strokes, and they're not saying it's because of the water.
Yeah.
You potentially could have thousands of people in Flint that have died directly or indirectly related to consuming that water. Can you talk about when you were in the hospital, was it pretty hairy for a while that they didn't know if you'd make it?
Oh yeah, I was throwing up chunks of blood and everything. They didn't think I was going to make it, but I did. I come home 10 days later.
And when you were showering, were you like a in and out kind of shower, or maybe?
No, because at that time it was real hot out, and I'd go in there and take a shower to cool off. I can't stand the heat.
But he would take 3 and 4 showers a day. Let me tell you that, because, like I said, well, I know he just told you, we couldn't really afford to have the air conditioner running because of our bills, because we're both disabled. So, you know, it was like we couldn't really afford it, so it just sat there.
Well, process of elimination, you're taking 4 showers a day, the
Right,
AC's not running, you're not getting it from the weather.
I think I was right, but it was crazy because I'm all the time joking, messing around, and that's what she thought I was doing, but come to find out I was out of my head. And that's why she ended up calling the ambulance, because then she realized that something was wrong, because I just way out.
Now, to viewers watching, you would think, if the CDC's calling you, it's because the hospital is flagging to the CDC if they have Legionnaires patients. If the CDC is calling you, I'm assuming you told them I showered this much of this and that. if the CDC exists for public health, you would think they'd do some type of investigation,
Right.
look into, is there other cases of Legionnaires? Is there an increase in the diagnoses of pneumonia in hospitals that might actually be Legionnaires? But from what you're saying, it sounds like as soon as they found out it's likely from the Flint water, they didn't want
Nobody
any...
wanted to touch it. And then they had all them cases of Legionnaires up there at McLaren anyway, so
Right.
they probably was afraid it was going to bring a lot of unwanted attention to them or something.
And after you came home, tell me about your health after that, because you said
I'll tell you what, it was hard to breathe for a while, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It was about 2-3 months there afterwards. And then I turned around and got COVID in October. My lungs wasn't even healed yet, and I ended up with that, and that almost killed me.
of 2021.
Yeah.
Mhm. And almost died from that time too, because I didn't have sense enough to go to the hospital. But yeah, it was crazy. I was coughing up blood like you wouldn't believe, and that's enough to rattle your nerves there.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously you were worried at this point, but
yeah.
are you thinking the water's still contaminated? Clearly, this is from the water.
I'll never trust it. Never. I don't care if I live to be 150, at which I ain't going to. But if I was, I wouldn't trust it.
Mhm.
You know?
Because you hear from the mayor and some others, it's a trust issue. The water is safe now, but it's just we need to rebuild trust. But then I keep in contact with residents all the time, even when I'm not here. I have them telling me their water smells like sewer,
Yeah.
their water smells like pond, tiny
Eggs.
black particles are coming out floating around. You have people sending me pictures that they still have rashes. How is that determined as safe if all this stuff is still going on 9 years? And by the way, if you're not an engineer watching, they've only been changing 1 out of 3 of the necessary pipes to change. They're only changing the service lines, which go from your curb into your home. They haven't been replacing the main pipes that run underneath the street,
Yeah.
and they haven't given, as far as I know, they're not paying to fix interior plumbing.
No.
No,
And all of that they're not changing, it's not like the toxic water just skipped over those pipes.
Right.
So it seems
Well,
that you
our
could still have
pipes-
corrosion.
Right. Our pipes are mostly galvanized. We found that out through the EPA when they were coming out and doing tests all the time. Like I say, we're both disabled and we just barely get enough to survive, and pay our bills and plus eat. And it's like, we got to have water. I don't trust it. I'm not going to drink it. Even with a filter, I won't drink it. I got a grandson that lives right next door to me. He was poisoned also, and he's never going to have a normal life. He's broken 2 of his bones, and he hasn't even really done anything to break the bones, and he's got health issues constantly. He's sick.
How old is he?
He'll be 9 in October. So, but yeah, it's just a nightmare living here. I never thought in a million years this is America. I didn't think we'd ever live through something like this, with our government at that. So,
After, fortunately, you survived the Legionnaires, but your health has still been problematic since then. What's going on right now?
well, pretty much just the same old thing. I just had surgery I'd done for the second time on this shoulder and the bicep, and
your kidneys.
my kidneys, they're trying to get them straightened around.
Did you have kidney problems before the water switch?
No. And so it was kind of crazy. We didn't drink that water very long. Our dogs started getting sick, puking up the water.
Wow.
And it was like, hey, wait a minute. Since they switched that water, they started every time they drink water, they throw it up.
Wow.
It was like, I ain't drinking that no more. So we started buying bottled water.
When was
Then they
this
come
that
out-
when was this that you stopped drinking it?
I'd say probably about December, January of 14, 15.
So that you were probably drinking it for about 6-7
Yeah.
months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And kidney issues is the common thing with heavy metal poisoning.
Yeah.
And there was bacteria and all sorts of other things that they never wanted to test for or even acknowledge
Yeah.
was in the water. What strikes me is I've always said Flint is kind of the playbook for other places.
Yeah.
Because look at East Palestine, the train explodes,
Yeah.
all sorts of toxic chemicals. The EPA comes in, they're testing, but voila, they're not finding any of these heavy toxins at quote-unquote concerning levels. Meanwhile, the residents are getting nosebleeds, dizzy, nausea, burning eyes, rashes, which are actually chemical burns, a lot of other symptoms. And the EPA doesn't want to answer, well, what are those symptoms coming from?
Yeah.
The railroad certainly doesn't want to answer. And it's kind of similar here. A lot of residents I've spoken with have said their doctors don't want to declaratively say it's from the water. I've seen media outlets write headlines, Flint is now a cancer cluster. Could it be because of the water?
Well, I had a
No,
niece.
it's because of the weather.
I had a niece. She was playing down here when she was a little kid in the water, and she had a cut on her ankle. And the bacteria was so bad in the water, she ended up getting some real bad infection. And she was really sick from it. And it's like, the water had been bad for years and years, but the lead didn't help either. But
Right.
my dad, he worked down in Chevy in the hole, and he'd tell us that you could watch the cutting oils and stuff just run right out the drains through the floor right out to in the river.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, that stuff can't be good for you.
Right.
Oh, the Flint River, besides the fact that they didn't add the proper chemicals, GM was dumping its waste in there for a century. You had fracking waste in there. I mean, hell, dating back to the 1800s,
Yeah.
there was industry dumping in the Flint River. The plant, I mean, I've reported the plant didn't even have the proper equipment to add the chemicals. I say that plant, running that plant to treat the Flint River is the equivalent of getting on a plane where one of the wings is kind of like shaking.
Yeah.
So talk about your grandkids have had issues.
Yes.
What about the rest of the community? Because it's striking to me every year I come back, there's less and less people out at these anniversary events or at any events, and I have to imagine. Well, I know some of it is people have passed.
Right.
Other reasons people are sick, but I would assume a lot of the other reasons are people just kind of lose hope.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
That's what I believe is they've lost hope because I didn't actually know anything was going on anymore about the water other than the lawsuits. I had called Melissa Mays for something back last month, and she was asking me what I was doing that evening. And I told her, I said, I don't think anything. She says, I want you to come to the town hall. So that's what I did. And I done the interview there with Courtney Bennett. And I explained to her, I never once in a million years thought that we would be fighting over water, And so basically, now, like I said, I'll never trust it. Never.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way.
And what is really incredible to me, I think a big part of this scandal is the media.
Yeah.
The media, when I first came in 2016, I came in July 2016, so that was after all the national reporters had come, after Rachel Maddow had come. But you were already getting these headlines like, lead levels are improving in Flint.
Yeah, that was a lie.
And you're already getting these headlines like, oh, we're passing out, X amount of filters per day. And a lot of it was just marketing and PR coming from the governor.
Yeah.
But the filters went bad quick.
Yeah.
The filters could help with lead, but cause bacteria.
Yeah.
And then I learned, we knocked on almost 400 doors in 2018, that the environmental department under Governor Snyder, they were cheating on the water testing. They were running the water not the night before, right before taking the test.
Yep.
And I broke those stories, and time after time, the local media here didn't want to pick it up. The national media didn't want to pick it up. Actually, I don't know if the audience knows, that story I just told you about where we knocked on the doors, we had like 35 residents on the record that the state environmental department had come into their home and ran the water, which is against federal regulations. Also that folks from the environmental department had given residents instruction to do it when they test themselves. We were going to publish it in Newsweek magazine, pretty big outlet, and they killed the story 2 days before it was supposed to publish. We've broken that Snyder, Richard Baird, his top advisor, was going around offering payoffs to sick residents. We've broken that prosecutors got Snyder's phone calls, and that Snyder, his chief of staff, the head of the health department were on the phone 22 times in 2 days in October 2016 when the Legionnaires was a big problem. And prosecutors concluded they were covering it up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other things. We broke that Snyder's top officials deleted their phones right before the criminal investigation.
Yeah.
And all these things, I took it to the Detroit Free Press, the Detroit News, the Flint Journal, New York Times, Washington Post. Either no response or some literally unbelievable, not believable, why they didn't want to cover it. So that helps things get swept under the rug.
Right.
If the media is just going to erase it.
They think we're stupid or something. They can tell us a lie and we're going to believe it because we're beneath them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it makes you feel like.
I wish I'd have talked to you when you were at that church. I know you had all kinds of people coming and talking to you, and I tried to talk to you, but you was too busy, and I ended up having to leave.
This was in 2017? Years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been years ago. But when the EPA come to my house, you're right. They would run the water and then do the samples. After they'd tell us, oh, don't run the water for at least 6 to 8 hours. Okay.
Erin Brockovich, who I think knows a little bit about corruption, she said it's a crime. That when you're falsifying, they call it a compliance sample. When you're falsifying a federal compliance sample, it's a crime. You're falsifying data, and you should throw out all of that testing. And adding insult to injury, let's not forget this current governor, because I sent it, Flint residents, I understand why, had high hopes when she was coming in. We're getting rid of Snyder. Whitmer's talking the talk that she's going to reopen the water stations that were shut down, and she's going to do this and do that. So I sent to her people our report that they were cheating on the water testing. And she even acknowledged it. She was on, I think Flint Journal had an interview with her. And she acknowledged, we know the testing was not done properly, this and that. But then they just went with those results. Mm-hmm. And it, the EPA reports that the levels are back to normal. Meanwhile, I would think that they would want to look at what the acceptable levels are.
Right.
But it just seems like maybe Whitmer wasn't involved in the initial cover-up, but she has not done anything
Her hands
for
ain't
Flint.
clean, that's for sure.
Right. What do you think of the current administration?
It's a joke. Yeah, ain't nobody want to help do nothing, to be honest with you. It's all about the money, And as Melissa Mays used to say all the time, you treat water as a commodity, people die. And that's the truth, And I mean, we shouldn't have to pay for poison water, so.
And by the way, you guys are paying the highest rates in the country for poisoned water. And, I mean, it's not cheap to have to go buy bottled water.
No.
You got young mothers that are using 10, 15 bottles of water to give their kids a bath.
Yeah.
The amount of bottled water you got to use to cook, to clean. I mean, this is a poor city. It's one of the poorest in America. And people are having to beg, borrow, and steal for bottled water, or if you get enough money to get a home filtration system. Meanwhile, I'm not trying to be political, but we sure seem every day you hear, we just sent another $1 billion to Ukraine or this country or that.
Yeah.
Well, how about you send that to Flint?
Yeah,
right.
spending all this money we don't even have.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to print some more up today.
Talk to me about, the community. There seems to be kind of there's a lot of focus on downtown, and let's bring in cultural centers and restaurants and bars.
They don't care about where we live. Just our neighborhood alone, the houses are burnt up, falling apart, and they don't do nothing. But if we was to not mow our lawn and it gets too long, guess what? We're getting a fine. And I just feel like they're not worried about certain people. The poorest ones, they don't care about. As far as I'm concerned, we're disposable to them. They don't know us, they don't care. You know, and that's how I feel. And, you know, that's horrible to say, but I've felt like that since, you know, they changed the water, because they don't care about the people. You know, and like I said, it's all about the money is the way I'm looking at everything.
And what's also, I think most residents didn't even know they were switching the water. It's not like they made a big thing about it. A lot of residents...
The only reason I knew was because of the news. And I don't even really watch news anymore because it's so much lies. You know, so...
But back to the money thing, going into downtown and all that, I wondered myself if that's why they ain't holding back, that's why they're holding back this money that's supposed to go to the kids and all that. I got a feeling they're getting interest off of that and blowing it on their little projects.
Right.
I mean, it don't make sense. Where'd all that money come from now? It didn't have it before.
Right. And, you know, it's also infuriating to me. Sometimes you see a bunch of, bootlickers for Obama or Biden on Twitter and elsewhere saying, well, Obama's Congress gave Flint $160 million. And I talk to residents in Flint, and they say, well, that money didn't come to us.
You're right.
That money didn't go towards the water crisis. And there was reports years ago that the $300 million, whatever it was, I think it was $380 million or so, that under Snyder, the state had earmarked to go to Flint. That money was going to nonprofits, it was going to real estate, it was going to law firms, it was going to banks. Not a lot of it went towards the people of Flint. So you have the initial crime that was allowing people to drink this toxic water when they knew it was toxic. And then you're basically stealing the money that's marked for new pipes or health care for residents or services for children who now have learning disabilities. It's just crime after crime after crime that gets swept under the rug.
Look at all the money they had. They was talking to city council that Ananick found that was they never knew they had. You don't hear nothing about that money or where it went. You know, Ananick and Peters and Kildee, they're all in that together with them. You know they are.
Can I ask you about, you look at, there was an investigation started in 2016. The Attorney General then hired a special prosecutor, Todd Flood, to run the investigation. It seemed like, from an outsider's perspective, they had charged 15 people, including financial crimes, because this was all a scheme, a privatization scheme. My sources told me they were building a case against Snyder for involuntary manslaughter, which is pretty serious.
Right.
They weren't about to charge him, but that's the case they were building. Other reporters have confirmed that. It seems like they were doing a decent job. Yeah, it was taking a while, but it was you're investigating multiple departments, etc. And Nessel, the current Attorney General, came in, and I've talked to lawyers, and they've never seen anything like it. That she just squashed the whole investigation, fired the whole team, and restarted from the beginning. And based on my sources, they didn't even do like a thorough debrief with the previous investigators to find out, like, what do you have? Where were you going with this? She dropped charges against people and then recharged them. But in many cases, the people she recharged, she charged them with lesser crimes. Yeah. And then this last year, it all got thrown out because the Supreme Court of Michigan said you guys did it the wrong way.
Yeah.
That's what I told her from day one when Nessel took over on that. Something stinks here, and it ain't right. Something's going on.
So you thought that her dropping the charges and all this was intentional?
To pick them back up, yeah.
Why do you think they would intentionally try and screw their own case?
Money.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much money floating around from hand to hand around here. The whole United States, really.
Well, I call it the United Corporations of America.
Yeah.
Well, just from a common sense perspective, you don't have to be a lawyer. Let's say the new Attorney General comes in and for whatever reason wants to get rid of, the chief prosecutor and appoint her own. Okay, but why would you fire the entire team? Why would you dismiss the charges? She claimed it was because they messed up, but I never saw any evidence that they messed up so bad that they had to drop all the charges.
She's the one that messed everything up.
And now 9 years later, As far as I could tell, the statute of limitations to charge for felonies in Michigan is 6 years. So most of the statute of limitations is passed. The only one that still possibly applies is involuntary manslaughter, because that's 10 years. But the clock is now running out on that, because next year is 10 years, and you don't hear from them. I contacted the Attorney General's office 2 days ago, and I asked a very simple question. I said, you guys are saying there's still an ongoing investigation. What is ongoing? If the Michigan Supreme Court threw out your charges, you appealed it, and you lost. So what is the ongoing investigation? How are you going to recharge these people if the statute of limitations has already run out? They have not gotten back to me, because I don't really think they have an answer. I think they're just hoping that...
They're hoping everybody just shut their mouth and leave it alone.
If me or you killed somebody, they'd hang us outside the courthouse. And look at all the people that died from this, and they're just walking away scot-free. They ought to be hanging out there themselves, as far as I'm concerned.
What does it say that in America, you know, you hear all this jazz, no one is above the law?
Right, I wanted to say that too.
Well, obviously there's some people above the law.
Yeah, because everybody's getting away with it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I even accidentally poisoned someone, I'd probably see some jail time.
Yep.
Mothers will be arrested if they leave their kid in the car,
Yeah.
accidentally or intentionally. But here, let's say for argument's sake, the governor of the state, let's say he's telling the truth and he wasn't informed and he didn't know. Well, that's almost worse. You're the governor.
Yeah.
What was you doing?
What's your message? Let's say the Attorney General sees this or the federal government sees this. What's your message to them? I mean, let's just round it to 10. We're almost at a decade.
Right.
What would you want to say to them?
Thanks for nothing. That's basically what everybody's got. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of talk.
And are you worried, I assume, about not only your grandkids, but, you know, the future generation? Because kids here are, you got learning disabilities,
Yeah.
a lot of behavioral problems, which happens with heavy metal poisoning.
Yeah.
People are far behind in school. You know, they should be at a, sixth grade level, but they're really at a second or third grade level.
Yeah.
How are they going to go on to be, functioning adults, really?
Yeah. It's nuts.
Yeah, I worry about my grandkids all the time, and now my great grandkids at that do live here in Flint. My granddaughter, she's been, buying water and stuff, and it's like she don't get that much either, And I mean, she goes out and she buys special water for her kids, and it's all a big mess, And I don't even know what to think anymore. They want us all dead is how I kind of look at it, because they don't care if we survive or if we die.
We go through 10 or 15, 40 cases a month.
Yeah.
And what would be your message to the rest of America that, people just don't see it in the news, so they assume it's been fixed and they assume it's better?
No, it's not. And protect yourself and get your water tested. Because to be honest with you, if I wouldn't have lived through this, I wouldn't even have thought that,
Yeah.
So, and now I'm wanting to get it tested, but see, I want to do it outside of Flint if I can possibly find somebody, because I know they're going to come back and say, oh, well, it's fine. You can drink it. No, I'm not.
A last question. You see what's going on in East Palestine. There's so many other communities. I mean, Detroit, Jackson, Mississippi, so many other communities. Pittsburgh, Milwaukee. I've been to North Carolina, Indiana. Water problems, soil problems, lead, arsenic, chromium, chloroform, PFAS, which are the forever chemicals. God knows what else that the EPA is not testing for.
Yeah.
And they're a little earlier on in their crisis, but what's your message to them? Because obviously you don't want them to be where you are 9 years from now.
Like I said, have everything tested that you can. If it's within your means, have it tested. And don't trust just anybody, especially your own county or your city, because they're going to lie to you if they've got money coming in for something.
Right.
Just be safe, protect your family, whatever you got to do.
American dream, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because at this point, I don't think anybody's really got a dream. Not anymore. You know, this is supposed to be America, the land of the free, and it ain't free. They're trying to kill us all off.
Get more and more communist.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.